Hi, welcome back. I am reviewing the bareMinerals new original liquid foundation today. So this is a play on their original powder foundation we all know, we all love, we've all been using for years, but in a liquid form. So quite interesting. I never really thought that they would do this just because this has always been kind of the hero staple product. So for them to replicate this in a liquid form, it's a big risk. But I do have to hand it to those of you who are loyal bareMinerals users, followers. The day that this launched on QVC, I got several messages. I would have known nothing about this product unless it were for you all sending it to me. So immediately when I saw it, I ordered it. It says on QVC it is exclusive to their website until 12/31. I did, after I ordered this from QVC, several days later, I did receive a PR package from bareMinerals with some additional shades, and I believe the card in the package said it would be available on 12/26. So somewhere at the end of December, it should be available in other retailers, but I do believe for right now it is only exclusively on QVC, which is where I ordered mine from. Okay, let's just jump into this because I want to give you the quickest information possible. I don't want to ramble on and make this a 30-minute review. So this is $35 and it comes in 30 shades, which should correspond to your powder foundation shade. Now I have received some messages from those of you who have already received yours, and also those of you who work at a bareMinerals store, and those of you who work for bareMinerals. A couple of you have said you've been trained to tell people to go up a shade compared to your powder foundation shade. I'm not sure how I feel about that because I currently own 4 colors, and I'm going to talk about those colors and why I feel it might just be better to stick with your shade that you know and you love in the powder, or if you're unsure, to probably just go off the photo that represents your skin tone best. So I ordered the shade initially from QVC. The shade I ordered was Fairly Light. That's not the shade I'm wearing right now. However, I do think Fairly Light is the most accurate shade for my skin tone right now. The only thing I noticed about the liquid Fairly Light compared to my original Fairly Light is that the liquid is a little bit more yellow. It runs a little bit more on the yellow side, whereas my powder Fairly Light is slightly more neutral. As far as the shades go, I feel like neither one is darker than the other. They're pretty similar in comparison to what the shade range is. Let me read off to you and show you swatches of 3 of the other shades that were actually sent to me by bareMinerals after I purchased Fairly Light. So I received Fair 01, which is the lightest color, Fair Ivory number 2, second lightest color, and then they also sent me Fairly Medium number 5, which is what I'm wearing today. Now, I'm wearing Fairly Medium today because it gives me a little bit more color than the Fairly Light, and I like that when I'm filming because I am in front of such a bright mirror. It just gives me a little bit more color. But as far as like everyday wear goes, I'm happy with Fairly Light, the shade that I chose. So back to whether you should choose a shade darker or lighter than what you wear in the powder. It's really hard for me to gauge because if you can tell in the swatches, Fair and Fair Ivory, which are the 2 lightest shades in the lineup, in my opinion, show up darker on my skin than Fairly Light and Fairly Medium do. I don't know if you can pick up on that from the swatch, but just from what I see and from what I've tested on my face, it's kind of strange because the Fair and Fair Ivory, I don't know if it's just the undertone that kind of throws me off, but they just appear darker to me than Fairly Light and Fairly Medium. So it's hard for me to gauge and tell you what shade you should get. Just from what I'm seeing, I don't think I would recommend anyone to go up a shade. Let me know down below if the shade you ordered matches you, if you feel like you should have went up, if you feel like it's a perfect match. Let's get some conversations going so we can help people out as far as the color categories go, because I'm actually pretty concerned for those of you who have extremely fair skin, because that was always a problem in the original powder foundation. I know for those of you who have very, very fair skin, fair is just, it's not light enough. And I feel like a lot of you all are probably going to run into that problem with the liquid, because the liquid just didn't seem super fair to me. Compared to the Bare Pro liquid, the lightest shade in it, it's pretty fair. I feel like the Bare Pro color lineup is slightly better. And as far as the darker shades go, Deepest Deep number 30, I believe that was always bareMinerals' darkest color, so it doesn't seem like they've expanded darker. For those of you who don't know, I did work at a bareMinerals store for 5 years when I was in college, and I vividly remember our customers coming in with various black skin tones and us just not having a shade dark enough for them. So I feel like there could have definitely been some expansion, some switch ups in the color range, because it still seems to be the same as it was, 10-15 years ago. And they expanded the shades in Bare Pro, so I feel like, the same probably could have been done for this. Let's talk about coverage on this. So the website or QVC recommendation says 1 pump for medium coverage, 2 pumps for medium full coverage. I disagree with that slightly. I feel like this foundation really just runs on like the solid medium coverage category. I don't feel like it's as full coverage or as buildable as Bare Pro is. I also don't like to build this foundation up, period. I've discovered that 2 pumps is my maximum before I just feel like my face looks a little too heavy, almost a little too waxy. I did like 3.5 pumps one day to see if I could get the coverage built up just in the areas where I have more redness. And I did not like the way it looked when I put it on, and I did not like the way that it wore throughout the day. So for me, I stop at 2 pumps with this, and I do think that it is a nice medium coverage. You can still slightly see some redness peeking through, but bareMinerals did release a concealer with this foundation. Now, I didn't see that on QVC. I actually was unaware a concealer was coming out with this foundation until they sent me the package. I'll include some shots here. I don't really want to get too full in depth with it, other than it is a pretty decent coverage concealer. I would say solid medium coverage. And I would compare it to, let's say, Bare Pro in a liquid form. Definitely has more of that satin finish to it, more coverage than the Bare Skin Serum Concealer. Probably not as much as the Bare Pro Stick Concealer though. It's somewhere in between. A nice solid medium coverage going on. So back to, the foundation still showing a bit of redness. I did apply the concealer once I received it in those areas, and it shaped up nicely. I actually have really been enjoying the concealer formula. Nothing really negative to say about it. Medium coverage, goes nicely with the foundation, and doesn't seem to be too drying, doesn't seem to be too dewy on the skin. I do also think it's important to note that I have only applied this with a brush, just because I'm basically like a 90% brush girl. Like, most of the time you're gonna see me use foundations with a brush as opposed to a beauty blender. Sometimes I get in a beauty blender kick, but as of right now, I haven't used this with a beauty blender, just use it with a brush. I don't see why you couldn't. I think it would definitely come out more sheer, which is not what I'm looking for in this foundation, but just to let you know, I have only applied this with a brush. So 2 pumps, that's my maximum. I don't like the way it looks on my skin built up any further. Let's lead into longevity now. So as far as longevity goes, this for me is probably one of the, I won't say least long wearing out of all of the bareMinerals formulas, because I think it probably has complexion rescue beat. But if I were to compare this to the longevity of the powder and also the Bare Pro foundation, it doesn't meet the mark for me. Bare Pro, as some of you know, is one of my all-time favorite foundation formulas. It's very skin-like, but it's buildable. It can provide you with full coverage, but it's also one of the longest wearing foundation formulas I have ever tried. Same thing goes for the powder. I've always been such a fan of the powder because it stays on my skin so nicely, and it's one of the few foundations that I think looks better on my skin as I wear it throughout the day. So I don't feel 100% that way about this formula. I think it looks, and I am going to show you what it looks like a couple different times throughout the day, but I feel like it just wears off okay on me. It's definitely not as long wearing as Bare Pro. I would say somewhere around or between like the 6 to 8 hour mark, I definitely notice a little bit of fading around like my jawline area. I can start to see my freckles peeking through. I just definitely notice it to start wearing off quicker than both Bare Pro and the original powder foundation. As far as the finish goes on this, it's very interesting because when you put it on, you kind of get a soft, like luminous finish. It's not dewy like Complexion Rescue, and it's not as matte as Bare Pro. It's kind of just somewhere in between. But as I wear it throughout the day, I almost feel like it has like this soft powder look, which I'm sure they were going for since they were kind of mimicking the original powder foundation. I just haven't decided if I'm just super crazy about the finish on it. I don't hate it. I don't think it looks terrible. I'm not 100% crazy about it because I have two other formulas to compare it to that I just seem to like a bit better. I will say, if you are someone that doesn't like Complexion Rescue, you don't like the powder, and you don't like Bare Pro, maybe you feel like Bare Pro's too matte for you, maybe you feel like Complexion Rescue is too dewy, and maybe you're just not a powder person, this could be right up your alley because it's kind of just swiveled in the mix. It's like that one product that they were kind of missing. It's just very what's the word? It's very neutral. It's very neutral. It's not matte. It's not dewy. Has this kind of strange satiny appearance to it. But overall, for me, in my opinion, I would just kind of put it somewhere in between. I've been wearing this for a week now. I'm not over the moon about it, but I don't hate it. It looks fine on my skin. It wears off kind of like any traditional foundation would. And I don't find it to look really crepey and ugly when it wears off. Just wears off a little bit quicker than the other two that I prefer. All right, we've covered the price, the color selection, the longevity, and the coverage. Really, this is where I just like to throw in my final thoughts. And my final thoughts are really just that, what I kind of left off in the last frame. For me at this point, after using it for a week, I feel like it's a very neutral foundation for me. It's not one that I see myself replacing Bare Pro or the powder with, but I think it is a good addition to the bareMinerals lineup for those of you who have always maybe been a big fan of their other complexion products, but not necessarily the powder foundation. If you've always wanted to wear the powder, but maybe you were sensitive to it, this could be something to look into because I do think coverage-wise, it has a similar look. For me, the problem starts when I compare it to the longevity of the original powder. I just don't think it has that longevity to it. And I also feel like the original powder, as it mixes with your natural oils, it just looks so pretty throughout the day. Like it just wears and makes your skin, at least on me, I know some people Some people disagree. But for me, I've always found that it looks better the longer that I wear it. And I'm talking about the original powder. And I can't really say that fully about this. If you have tried this foundation, let me know your thoughts down below. Overall finish on this, I would say satin, somewhere in between a matte, somewhere in between a luminous finish. Coverage wise, like I said, I still stand by just solid medium coverage. I think if you build this up, you'll find what I was talking about. It just isn't the most flattering past the 2.5. I did 3 and I just wasn't having it. So I think if you are someone that wants coverage, go for Bare Pro over this. Bare Pro is much thinner in texture, it layers much better, and overall I think it does have a bit more of a better skin-like finish. If you're someone who likes a nice light coverage and you like a traditional cream liquid foundation, this is probably gonna be up your alley. Okay, I hope I answered everything. If I didn't, leave your question down below. Again, let me know if you've tried this. Let everyone know what your experience is. It really helps people out, especially your color experience, because that's one of the most challenging things, choosing a shade online. And I hope you enjoyed hearing my thoughts. And I'll see you in my next video. Bye.